All right. Thank you, everybody, for your patience. I know we were a couple of minutes late. We're still waiting to get Jeff on. The team's link has been giving us trouble. We've redone that. He's supposed to be joining here in just a moment, so please bear with us. We still have viewers coming on right now as well. I'd like to let those tabletop off every month, so that way we make sure we get full viewership. Everybody that wants to be here has the opportunity to catch all the content. So if you'll please just bear with us just for a quick moment. Jeff is trying to get on here with us and should be here in just a few moments. All right, while we are waiting for Jeff to be able to hop on here with us, I would like to just go ahead and say good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. This month's town hall is going to be a little bit different once we get Jeff on. Honestly, this is a very special one. Typically, our sessions do focus on education, regulatory updates, breaking news around CMMC, and all of those are important. But today, this is more than an update session. One of the most common questions that we get from prospects whenever we're talking to organizations pursuing CMMC Level 2 certification is, hey, everything sounds great, MAD security. Can we speak with someone who has actually gone through the process and completed the assessment? So MAD security, we do have case studies that we can send, one pagers, white papers. We do have written testimonials. We've even done some reference calls before, but today you get something even a little better. Today you get to hear live from a company that has successfully gone through the C3PAO CMMC Level 2 certification assessment and passed. At the end of today's session, you will have the opportunity to ask questions that are directly to Jeff and to Jacqueline Jones, our GRC lead. That's going to be during our live Q&A session at the end. And so for those of you joining us for the first time today, my name's Adam Starnes. I'm the Senior Account Manager here at MAD Security, working closely with our clients throughout their cybersecurity and compliance journeys. And we will be joined here shortly by Jeff from Realm 1, who will be sharing his experience and Realm 1's experience from the initial engagement with MAD Security to certification. We're also joined by Jacqueline Jones, our GRC lead here at MAD Security, and she'll be joining us for the during that Q&A portion, as I'd mentioned, to help address any technical or compliance-specific questions. In today's conversation, you're going to hear things like where RAM1 started their CMMC journey, what their initial SPRS score revealed, why they chose to go ahead and pursue a perfect 110 instead of just meeting minimum requirements at that time, why they engaged with MAD Security to help with those things, what the Virtual Compliance Manager or VCM's experience looked like in practice, and how MAD assisted during the C3PAO assessment, and lessons learned for organizations beginning their journey. This is a rare opportunity to hear directly from a company that has completed the CMMC Level 2 certification process, and they will speak candidly about what it actually takes. With that, I'll introduce Jeff after we get him on. He's trying to join here now, shot me over a message. Please bear with us for just another moment with the technical difficulties. We'll be right back on with you shortly. And I was just notified that he does have the meeting ID, so he should be coming on soon. Again, thank you so much for bearing with us during this technical difficulty. Also, I was just notified that we do have some clients and prospects trying to join, and they are having issues with the link actually joining in to watch the webinar. So if that is you, I do apologize for the difficulty of you actually being able to get in. Just another moment. We do have some live, so some of the links must have had a link break somewhere. So my apologies. Jeff is joining now. We'll be right back with you.
Hey, can you hear me okay?
I can. Can you hear me, Jeff?
I can. There's a bit of a delay, but not sure what's going on. It just took quite a while for everything to load up.
Hey, that's perfectly fine. I appreciate you joining us today. I actually went ahead, did the introduction, let everybody know that we're experiencing difficulties. We have some prospect links that are failing as well from some messages that came in. So something happened with that link during the process. But we'll go ahead and continue as normal today. This will, if you are listening, this will go out to everyone afterwards, as well as we are going to be sending this to anybody that does have, basically wants a reference on somebody that's worked with Mad Security before. So definitely thank you so much for joining us today, Jeff.
Oh, no problem. I'm happy to be here.
Well, good. Thank you. All right, so we'll kind of move on. I went through the introduction on what the listeners can actually expect out of today's call. So, Jeff, if you would just take a moment to introduce yourself, maybe things like what you do at Round One, where Round One's located, the size, what you guys do, maybe some different accomplishments or differentiators you're proud of with the Round One. Just kind of go from there.
Absolutely. As Adam has said, my name is Jeffrey Little. I work for Round One. We are a government contractor, support the DoD, MPO and LPO. The company has been around for quite a few years. We're kind of a conglomerate of, I guess, 5 or so companies kind of smashed into one. I came on board at Round One about 2 years ago. It's actually 2 years and 6 months now. And basically my task coming on board was to basically turn
My apologies. It does appear that we have now lost Jeff.
Hey, Adam, I'm back again. Sorry, I'm not sure what happened. Just got disconnected.
Oh no, that's perfectly fine. We can go ahead and hop right back in. Sorry about that, Jeff. Seems like we're
No
having some
problem.
difficulty still.
Yeah, it looks like Microsoft might have something going on right now in the back end. Yep, so I am on my phone, so hopefully it sounds okay, but I'm able to get in this way. I'm not sure where I got cut off, but I've been at Realm One for about 2 years now. And basically, as soon as I came on board, I got to work on CMMC. Our contracts that we work on already require DFARS 7012. And basically, every control that CMMC requires is already, or DFARS requires, is part of NIST 800-171, which is basically the backbone for CMMC at that point. So basically any company that is holding any sort of defense or a majority of DoD contracts are already required to, comply to those standards that CMMC lists out per the DFARS clauses in there. That's been going on for quite a few years now, but nothing ever happened with that, and nobody really cared at that time. Me, on the other hand, digging through and reading between the lines, as well as knowing the CMMC was coming along, I kind of got to work and started there. So our company size is about 800 employees at this time. It's spread out throughout the U.S. That's basically about myself and the company so far.
Yeah, absolutely. You hit it right on. I was actually going to ask you when you first knew that CMMC applied to Realm One, and you answered it in that question. That's definitely true. Jeff was very proactive about knowing what he needed to do and taking it seriously for Realm One. So definitely kudos to Jeff from Realm One for going and taking that serious. So many companies that we talk to are still in that phase trying to figure out, do we really have to do this? And he just said it. If it's there in your contracts, that is something that you're eventually going to have to do. So it's best to go ahead and kind of get started for sure. We'll kind of jump into the next question, and since we've kind of answered what I was going to ask you there, as you evaluated next steps, so you've decided now that you wanted to go ahead and start pursuing CMMC Level 2 certification. What ultimately led you to engage with MAD Security to help Realm One with the CMMC journey?
So when I first joined, I had a little bit of experience with CMMC and taking a couple of our partners there or organizations at a previous employer. So basically, as soon as I came on board, I went through and did everything I could myself as much as I could. I got the study material off the internet. I went through what I assumed was everything for the level one. And basically tried to get everything up to snuff for at least level one CMMC compliance. I then, while working on that in the background, was speaking to executive leadership, letting them know that, hey, ultimately we're going to need to get a gap assessment done. And I know a reputable company. I was fortunate enough to work with MAD Security previously before, and they were great. They were very responsive, and we had great feedback, not from just the people that I work with, but they were working with other organizations that my MSP that I worked for at the time supported, and we got nothing but great feedback from them. So I reached out, knew Adam. He got back to me pretty quickly, and we started working together at that point. Starting with a gap assessment. Which was great. So that's kind of just how things started between me and MAD Security at that point. I had done a little, searching around previously. I know from experience that, they weren't the cheapest, but we weren't looking for Joe Schmo's cybersecurity. We wanted somebody that actually kind of knew what they were doing, and, scraping the bottom of the barrel, the cheapest that you can find is, from my experience, and not been the best results. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean that's exactly right, and I definitely appreciate that about you from that point. We're not going to be the cheapest option that you're going to find. Now, if you want to think from a value perspective, I guess that's relative. We do live and breathe defense industry base here at MAD Security, and the CMMC is something that we just specialize in. So while we're not the cheapest, definitely not the most expensive, but definitely appreciate Jeff trusting in us to do that. So we started off with that CMMC Level 2 gap assessment. For listeners that don't know, we often start with a gap assessment to validate the controls that you think you have fully met and discover what controls that you've not met or partially met even. Sometimes everybody thinks something's met, but maybe the documentation's not caught up and matching what you actually have implemented, so that control would be considered partially met. So one of the 7 deliverables that you get from the gap assessment is the SPRS score, the Supplier Performance Risk System score. And the scoring can go from a negative 203 to a positive 110, 110 being perfect and what you ultimately need to actually pass. Jeff, when you started going through the initial gap assessment with MAD, do you remember what Realm 1's SPRS score was at that time?
I know that it was not in the negative triple digits, which was very nice to hear. But it was pretty far in the negative. Definitely not the worst, but definitely not the best. We had quite a while to go. So we weren't, and because of the way that the wording is on a lot of these controls, they kind of don't make any sense unless like you have somebody to interpret them for you. So we thought we were a little bit better than we actually were. But yeah, it was either right over to 3 digits in the negative or just over that. So
Yeah, I was actually able to pull it up here. Yeah, what you guys were not negative. So again, it goes from negative 203 to 110. It looks like 13 was the initial gap assessment. And let me
okay.
actually say kudos to that because, being in the positives of a -203 to 110 scale is great. We see people starting from -150 all the time, going from that point. Now, REM 1 already had a lot of the work in place and was only a few changes away from being much higher than that. So, no, that was awesome. Whenever you got that score, you know, what was your thought process? What did that number represent to you? How far did it feel off from that point when you got those initial results?
So when we got the results, I do remember now. We were actually kind of happy about it. We were pretty eager to take that to executive leadership and present that to them at that point. I definitely knew that some of the stuff that we were off on was more technical stuff and kind of, even in my mind, a gray area of me not understanding what they actually meant control wise. At that point, you could Google around and try to find an answer, but there was a lot of misinformation out there. So I kind of approached executive leadership at that point saying like, hey, the smart thing to do here, while I can try to do as much research and try to interpret these as much as I possibly can, I think we're going to need to bring an expert in to kind of guide us and help us get through this. At that point, we knew that we needed to hit level 2 for the contracts that we work on, with the potential of 3 way down the line. As we all know now, 3 isn't even achievable at this point. But we knew that we needed to hit 2, and we weren't going to be able to do it with our small IT team that we had, and we would need some help. So,
Yeah, for sure. Was there any particular gaps that like stood out to you immediately, or something that either one you're like, yeah, I knew we had that, we got to fill that in, or maybe it was something that you didn't expect when you saw it?
There's a couple that come to mind. I mean, more so like interpreting what some of the controls, like I said, I'm like beating a dead horse, what they meant. Restricting mobile code. I mean, that being said, or reading that doesn't make any sense. It makes you think like, software being, used on a cell phone or a mobile phone or something like that, when in fact it's kind of just restricting Java and some of the old legacy things. Some of the other stuff, setting up CUI rooms and restricting CUI to specific printers, and making sure that a CUI area exists that is restricted to people that only need to access it and things like that, was very helpful. I can tell you at the end, the biggest thing for us was policy. That was really the most difficult. You can do the technical stuff. You can buy as many tools as you want off the shelf to get these technical stuff taken care of. But getting the policy together, sounding correctly and written out, was the biggest hurdle for us. Matt was, you guys were awesome with helping out with that, making sure we hit all the points that we needed to. So, and that was really my biggest fear, to be honest with you, because I'm not the best policy writer. I'm not the best writer as it is. But you guys were able to I was able to bring you guys on, and actually that was one of the things that we asked if you guys could help us with, and that was kind of one of the driving factors behind it as well.
Yeah, policies. We hear that a lot. Policies are a big time suck, first of all. And again, it's a lot of people think like, hey, I've got all the tech stack implemented, which is great. That's a huge battle. That's probably one of the more costly things that people would think of, is like getting all the technologies put in place they need to meet the controls. But then policies, documentation, SSPs, all the, everything that takes so long to write. Yeah, no, I totally get it. There's many right there in that same boat. Policies are not a lot of fun for most people. Um, so, once you understood where you stood, Round One made the decision, not to just meet minimum requirements. We hear all the time, well, I only have to score a 88, which there's some misconceptions there too. You can't miss any 5 or 3-pointers, but you guys weren't like that. Whenever we talked to you guys, you said, we want to go ahead, knock this out, pursue the perfect 110. I know you kind of already spoke on it a little bit, but can you talk about like the thought process behind what made Realm One want to take a proactive approach to fully close everything, without having to go into it with findings and remediate later?
I mean, realistically, it's, we want it done right the first time. Having to go back and fix some of the issues and things that we missed or, decided to skip over was just not the way that we wanted to approach that at all. We don't want to have to go back and find out one of those level 1 or those scoring 1 controls will basically throw off another control. And what you find a lot of times when working through this is that, hey, we need to change this to try to meet this control, but it'll affect a whole bunch of other controls as well, and you have to redo everything. So we just wanted to get it all done the first time, and just kind of work through it. The way that you guys work through it with us, made it a lot easier for us to kind of approach that. As we met on our normal cadence, we would, walk through each of those controls, and honestly, it was just easier to get those knocked out of the way as we went down the line, as opposed to going back and trying to revisit them later on. But, overall, we just wanted to get it all done the first time.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's the right way to approach it for sure. And I'm sure you're glad you did now that you're sitting there with that certification in hand.
Yeah.
So you'll remember this more so than I. I know your VCM consultant was the one with you through most of this, but at one point I had noted here that I remembered that Realm 1 made a decision to maybe replace a few certain technologies. And during that transition, your SBRS score temporarily will go backwards until you get everything implemented and documented. Can you walk us through that phase and what kind of led to making the decisions rather than just like maintaining status quo for the moment?
Yeah, I mean, at that time, we found that the way our network infrastructure at the time was set up was not going to make things very easy for logging and monitoring at that point. So sometimes you have to take a step back, tear out the foundation. That way, no cracks develop down the line, and you're able to, build a good foundation to build the rest of your infrastructure on. So we kind of had to do that at one point, where we kind of had we developed what I like to call a tech stack, and it just standardizes our technology across the board. That way, we don't have to worry about several different vendors or different technologies or different softwares. We can just, update everything at once in one environment, or basically just one brand when it comes to like switches and firewalls and things like that. So it makes things a lot easier, like I said, to maintain, monitor, log, update, all the stuff that you needed to do. So we kind of took a step back, wanted to redo a couple things. It would just make it a lot easier in the long run. And looking ahead at some of the controls that we needed to close, we just needed to plan ahead. So that's kind of where that fell.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's very wise. A lot of people don't want to take the step back to get further, but that's exactly what it did, was make it so that you could take that little step back and then explode forward. That's I'd switched jobs and industries before, and you're like, man, you don't want to take a step back. It's kind of that pride thing, that score thing. But sometimes by doing so, you're able to go ahead and accelerate going forward. So that was great of you guys to realize that and do it.
I think another reason for that as well is broadening of scope. One thing when going through this process, and like one of the biggest things is scoping it out and deciding how big your scope is actually going to be. And rather than taking a passive approach and thinking, they're probably not ever going to be in scope, we just decided, hey, everything's going to be in scope. So that also was part of that, decision making as well, and can kind of like show us like, hey, they're nowhere near where they need to be. We got to bring them in the fold as well. So that was also part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, scope. We just had it in, not to get too far down another rabbit hole. But for anybody that's listening right now, that's going to be the most important thing to becoming CMMC compliant ready, is realizing what your scope really is, making sure that you have it right, and then securing that scope. Scoping is going to be the most important thing, arguably, that you could do throughout the process. Okay, so let's kind of jump into what working with MAD Security's virtual compliance manager service looks like in practice. Like things like, how often were you meeting, what kind of accountability or structure was in place, and how did that cadence kind of help maintain momentum?
Yeah, no problem. Working with MAD was great. My VCM at the time was amazing. I actually was fortunate enough to have opportunity to work with him prior, so I knew that he was really good and on top of things. The cadence at the beginning, it actually changed quite a bit over the time that we spent working with MAD, depending on basically kind of what we demanded and what the project was at the time. I believe the cadence at the beginning was a kind of a bi-weekly cadence. When we felt that we needed additional help trying to get through a particular hard control, you guys were more than happy to meet on a more regular basis, on a weekly basis, to make sure that we were doing things right, working through that control. So it was, as needed. The typical bi-weekly cadence is perfectly fine, especially when you're trying to get through it within a year's time. I believe, and this is 2 years, going back 2 years now, we kind of set a goal and the cadence was built off of that particular goal. I think we said like a year we wanted to try to get there. At the end of the day, it took us, 2 years before we had our certificate in hand, which is completely fine. It was a lot of work to do. But it definitely helps when you are meeting with that VCM and that VCM is kind of holding you accountable. Like, you don't want to be there and it's like, I don't have any updates for you. Even during the times that we didn't have any updates, we would still review some stuff to make sure that we were on top of things. And it was really nice to have that encouragement to stay on top of what you were working on and keeping that goal in sight.
Absolutely. It's something you said, Jeff, is a question that we get a lot of times. Everybody asks, how often is that cadence? And what Jeff said is the answer. We start sort of from wherever your goals are, and we say, okay, for your goal, we're going to have to do these things in this time frame, so we're going to need to meet this often. So MAD Security is going to be flexible on how often we meet with that virtual compliance manager service, and it's all going to be dependent on your goals. And I will say this, that we're not ever the holdback on how often we can meet. Something that you have to consider whenever we're picking your cadence is how many people do you have on your team? What's your bandwidth? How much time and resources can you put towards it? And then what can you get done between meetings from that point? So yes, we have some that are bi-weekly, some that are monthly, and that's enough for them to get it going because maybe they have a longer out goal and they're going to complete more work between meetings. We have some that have to meet every week because they're like, man, we've got to get this knocked out in 3 months because we've got a prime that's now requiring us to at least be at 88 by then. And goals is just that I'll refer back to that word. Goals is what's going to determine the cadence from that point and how much bandwidth you have to put towards it. So, we're able to do that, and it worked out great with Jeff and his team. Jeff, what would you say was the most valuable aspect of having a structured compliance partner rather than just trying to manage everything internally?
Oh God, I'm not the most organized person, so it was extremely helpful to have somebody kind of organize and stay on top of it. The way that you guys have it structured out, with your SharePoint and the organization of data was really very valuable to us in getting through this, one by one. Like I said, it's having that cadence and meeting every week or every 2 weeks or whatever the cadence is. It's nice because you're thrown off, you're putting out fires, you're working on this while still supporting the organization. It's a lot, and being able to rely on that VCM to go back and like, hey, I completely forgot where we are, can you get me back up to speed on everything? And, that was really the biggest value for me there. Having Dan at that time, be able to support me and help me, stay organized and get through this, within our goal time.
Yeah, absolutely. And what we hear from a lot of people too, you may feel the same way, is, many people have other aspects to their job besides just CMMC as well. So having somebody to manage it's a lot of feedback that we get from others is, that's what they do all day, every day is compliance, and it's efficient and it's quick. So there's a lot of value in having that expert there with it, because Jeff's a smart guy. He could have figured it out on his own. But definitely.
It would have taken another year or year and a half to get it all taken care of. I mean, like I said, the organization is not my strong suit, but trying to work through everything and you guys having some tips or feedback on how to close some of these gaps was very helpful. So yes.
Good. Well, I'm definitely glad to hear it. All right, well, let's go and talk a little more about maybe audit prep and the C through PAO experience. As you moved closer to a C through PAO assessment, how did MAD Security help prepare round one? Were there mock assessments or prep sessions that stood out to you, or something in particular that really helped?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as I said earlier, the documentation and policy was the hardest part. And we thought that we were where we needed to be with the policies and everything else, when in fact it was an absolute mess. While we worked through that, and I personally, as well as the team, we kind of fell behind with our initial goal, and with the November date looming and not being quite sure what was going to happen with that, we kind of wanted to make sure that we had a C3PAO date or an assessment date on lock, so we could, hit the ground running if we needed to. So that kind of pushed off our policy review a little bit, and it's like no fault of Matt at all. That was on us. We were like, oh yeah, the policy's fine. Here's some of it. So some of the policy we sent over was absolutely fine, and then we got feedback on some of the other stuff we needed to fix. But just to be sure all of our work was there, we decided to do a mock audit, and MAD came out. We did an on-prem mock audit. At the end of the day, Matt, we got feedback that we absolutely didn't want to hear. It was, hey guys, you're going to need to push back this assessment because you guys are not where you need to be. There's a little bit of a humbling moment. Again, it was all policy stuff, and trying to get an organization as large as we are in all of the departments to speak to each other and abide by all these policies, it was difficult, and we weren't there. So getting that feedback from MAD, taking it to executive leadership, explaining to them like, hey guys, we got to get some organization here, especially with the cybersecurity policies for CMMC. Otherwise we're not going to pass this. So them coming in, doing that mock audit was eye-opening for us. It was a great thing. We're so happy we actually ended up doing that, because we definitely would have passed for failure of the policy that we had. Now all the controls were in place, all the technicals were in place, but the way that we documented everything, the way that we wrote our policy was just not correct, and we absolutely would have failed on that. So after our mock assessment, we went back, worked with our BCM, we put a plan together, and we literally knocked it out in a couple of months very quickly, with the help of Matt. I think we were on a very quick cadence at that point, but we were all hands on board at that point. So yeah, we were happy to have that.
Yeah, y'all turned it around super quick. I remember getting the feedback that we needed to push it back. Hey, which is another something to know. When you do these mock audits and dry runs, this is for the listeners. We're familiar with see-through PAOs. We're familiar with what they'll be able to do, what some of them will allow to assist in things. And they will. They'll sometimes push it back. Now, they're not going to let you cancel it and say, here's your money back if you're just really not prepped. So that's why something like a VCM service could be really helpful, is to make sure that you're actually ready. But then, yeah, the mock assessment, that is definitely something that makes sure you're there and saves you from heartache and money and time later on. So that was awesome of them to do that. And then kudos to the round one team pitching in there and getting that knocked out so quickly so that they could actually get ready for the actual audit. And then they did. And during that actual see-through PAO assessment itself, how did MAD Security assist in real time throughout the audit? Now, I'm sorry, bear with us. Looks like we lost Jeff again for a moment. He should be back with us shortly. For the listeners, while we are waiting for him to actually get back into this, I would, again, just like to really give kudos to round one. They really pitched in there. We work with some organizations that, they'll sign up for virtual compliance manager service, and they either don't have the bandwidth or so much is going on that it's definitely a priority to them. But Realm One really jumped in there and got things knocked out when they needed to. It was definitely a great thing from them, and to see them pass was very rewarding because they are a large organization and they do take a little more time, a little more effort to get those there, and they absolutely did. Just one more moment. It looks like we're having a trouble with a link here to get back in. Let me get that right over to them. All right, we'll give it just one more moment. If he's not able to get back in with this new link that I just provided to him, then we will move on to the Q&A, and we'll bring our GRC lead, Jacqueline Jones, on that, and answer some questions for you as well, if they're not necessarily in particular to something in Realm One's case, but more towards the audit, assessment, or prep side of things. Just one more moment. We're going to give Jeff another moment. I think it's very important that we get him back here for this last question or two and the live Q&A. Bear with us. All right. So on Jeff's side, he is getting an error message saying that he is not allowed to join, but it just let him back in. There we go. I was just letting him know we got the error message. It's not allowing you to join, Jeff.
Yeah, I'm back in. It started working on the PC, so it's much better now.
Good. All right. Yeah, we're actually getting close to wrapping up with the questions before we go into live Q&A. So one thing that I was going to ask you here at the end is, what did successfully passing and receiving certification mean for you in Realm One?
I mean, it basically means that we can continue to do business with the DoD at this point. As we know, we're currently in phase 1 of the CMMC rollout, which means there's really no enforcement or requirements for you to actually be third-party assessed. Right now, they are, self-assessment is fine. As of November of this year, we will start seeing it on contracts as an actual requirement to be third-party assessed, whether it be level 2 or what have you. So it was very important for us to have that. I stated that all along with DFARS. It's been a requirement. So this is just now some sort of legal jargon behind it where you can be held accountable if you're not. So I knew that we needed to have it, and I'm glad that we were able to achieve it. Executive leadership had been waiting for this. They were super happy about it. And I know that we are one of the few that actually have it, at least that we're partners with at this time. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, what you just said is just that we hear that from a lot of clients. Hey, we don't have to be there yet. And while that may be true, as you just heard from Jeff during this, it does take time to get your company compliant ready. Then you want to be able to show maturity as well. So if this is something that you see coming and you have not started yet, or maybe that the company's not taken it seriously to this point or said we've still got time, just know you've been hearing it for a long time, but now you're truly kind of on the clock because it is going to take you time to prepare. They say the average company takes 6 to 18 months to prepare and become CMMC Level 2 certified. Unless you've just got a lot done with just some minor tweaks, it's probably going to take you at least that 6 months and maybe longer. Well, again, hey, thanks, Jeff, for sharing everything here so far. And congrats again for getting round one across the finish line. That CMMC Level 2 certification is big, and you were able to get that across the finish line.
Yep,
Yes,
we were
at
very
this
happy.
time. Good. Good. Yeah, I know you are. I was happy too. And when I got that notification, round one officially received their Level 2 certification, I was definitely happy for you guys for sure. Well, I guess at this time we are going to go in to the live Q&A. If you do have any questions about the process, the audit experience, what working with MAD security looks like, please go ahead and drop those into the chat. Jeff is here with us, and then Jacqueline Jones is going to go ahead and hop on with us as well, our GRC lead here at MAD Security, just in case there's any questions from the technical standpoint that I can't answer. She'll be on here for us as well. So go ahead and get those submitted, and I will get to those as they come in, putting them in order here. We've got a couple. Give everybody about 30 seconds to get some more in if we have any. All right, we'll go ahead and start with the first one that we have here. Let's see, Jeff, this one's for you. It says, looking back, is there anything that you would have done earlier?
Let's see here. Thinking back, I mean, fortunately for us, we were in GCC High as it is. I'm actually helping a couple people or organizations through the CMMC process right now with at least just kind of being an advisor. And a lot of them started going down this route using like Google or what have you for their data repository. You know, 5 months later, they decided to actually make the switch after putting a bunch of work in, and making that switch made everything so much easier. So I think that looking at it, trying to save a buck here and there, when in the end you should just do what is recommended to do, is probably one of the biggest things. I know that it's not possible for every organization out there to do that. But, you know, looking back for us, particularly, I think ripping out our network infrastructure and rebuilding it, you know, from the beginning was probably something that we should have done a little bit earlier rather than waiting until later to do it. As well as standardizing what equipment, and when I say equipment, I mean devices like laptops and everything we use throughout the organization. We had just an absolute mess of different laptops, and part of CMMC controls is having a baseline of everything. Well, trying to update a baseline for 60 different devices is very difficult to do. So kind of standardizing that equipment in the beginning makes it a lot easier. I can tell you that if you have Macs in your environment, get them out if you can, because it makes it a lot more difficult. We are using Macs, and it's definitely not impossible, but it's going to tack on a large cost trying to get all of those controls and being able to actually enforce them through the software and through your tenant as well. So.
Yeah, no, great answers. Thank you for that, Jeff. Let's see, this one came in. Let's see, Jacqueline, they wanted to ask our GRC lead, what is a realistic timeline expectation for reaching CMMC compliance?
It all depends on how many controls you have open and then the time, resources, money, everything you have to devote to it. What we used to see is 12 to 18 months, but what the issue is now, as Jeff mentioned earlier, starting November this year, you might start seeing CMC requirements in your contracts. So what we see now is 6 to 9 months, and that's still, you're devoting a lot of time to it. It's not a 2 or 3 week process. You got to get policies in place, technical configurations in place, and then you have to have that validation that you are ready for your certification assessment. So we're typically seeing now 6 to 9 months, and with it being March of this year, it's a time crunch. But typical timeline is it's just realistic.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and Jacqueline, I don't mean to jump in, but going through this process ourselves, as well as with other companies, when I was at my previous MSP working with you guys, realistically, it's probably going to take over a year, no matter how much money you're going to throw at it. I mean, I guess you probably could get it done within 6 months, but like you said, you'd have to have already a lot of stuff in place for so. It's not just the technical factor; it's the human factor in a lot of the things as well. And trying to get people to do what you want them to do is very difficult. Implementing MFA was a huge thing. People don't like having to use MFA devices to get in, and that's a requirement. And we had a lot of pushback on it. So again, the human factor is one of the largest ones getting through CMMC.
And I'll add to that a little bit. Everyone has the best intentions. They'll say, I can get it in 3 months, I can get it in 4 months. And then reality sets in. Everyone's wearing all these hats. You can't do that. People have vacations. They have other duties they have to do. And it's very, very difficult to fit it in really quickly.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We did have another question here, and this could be for either of you, wasn't specified. It says, what do the assessors focused on most in the assessment?
I'm assuming that's the C3PAO. Assessors.
Yeah, we're going to go with that because, yeah, that's how they labeled it. So we'll go with the C3PAO.
Policy. They want to make sure what you have matches the policy, like verbatim. A lot of the policy stuff and controls are kind of organization defined and self-defined. Those numbers better match up when it comes down to it. I do know that every C3PAO is different. They do have to meet certain criteria, but some are a little bit, I wouldn't say lenient, but will allow you to go and fix, a couple of things like, hey, our password, expiration date is such and such. Maybe you're off by like 10 days or something like that. They'll let you know and they'll give you an opportunity to fix it and they'll go back and review it the next day. But for the most part, I think the biggest thing that they want to see is that your policy matches what your technical controls are. And a lot of times it doesn't match up in a lot of the self-defined controls there are, because those ones aren't defined, they're defined by yourselves, and sometimes it's not always accurate. So just make sure when you're going through and showing them that policy matches up. So one of the good things for us was that we went back and kind of ran through all of those controls really quickly, and made sure that the policy actually matched up. And we did that by taking screenshots, which was another part of the VCM process, where when we ran through a lot of that stuff and we were looking at these controls, we took a screenshot that would prove that, hey, what it says here in policy or what we have under this control matched up what was actually set up in our technical policies, like our GPO and things like that.
Absolutely. Jacqueline, anything you want to add?
Yeah, I was going to add, so in addition to the policies, the procedures is a big thing. They want you to have your procedures documented, because what they want to see is your procedure written out, and then they want to interview the person who performs that procedure and make sure that they match. So having the tribal knowledge, one person knows how something's done without it being documented, defined, it isn't, you're not going to be successful to meet the requirements of control, because they need something that's a repeatable process that can be done by more than just one person. So the documentation is the biggest thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And when I say policy, I actually mean documentation. So Jacqueline, sorry. Thank you for correcting me on that, because
you're good.
It really is. I forgot all about those KBs. We made a lot of them. So
yeah. And if you're listening right now and you're on a high level like me, because I am just disclosure here, I'm not the GRC consultant here. I'm not the expert on every control. But on a high level, I was able to sit with a client through a day and a half of their assessment. I was there for other reasons. And during that time, the most important thing that I would say that they look at is they look at everything. They make sure that it is implemented correctly. You have the evidence for it. They make sure it's documented correctly. And they make sure that whoever is in charge of talking on that control actually knows how to talk about it, actually knows how to show that it is something that is in practice. You got to do all three. Can't just be documented, not implemented. Can't be implemented, not documented. And then somebody's got to be able to talk to it as well. And definitely say that is all three just as important, because they could cause you issues or even delays if not missing the control for not being able to properly explain it. All right, let's see. Again, I think this could be for either of you. This will probably be the last one we can get to today before we close out here. What advice would you give organizations that think they are almost ready? That could be for Jeff or Jacqueline, either way.
I'll let Jeff take it because I talk a lot in these town halls.
I would double check your work. Go back and look through every control. I would break it out into weeks, and depending on how much time you have. I would go ahead and break out each section into a week, go through all those controls. Like I said, take screenshots if you can, and just double check them. Make sure everything matches up and aligns correctly. Make sure that the procedure works for the KBs. Make sure that there's nothing that you're kind of missing, because like I keep reiterating, documentation is like one of the biggest keys. In our mind, I'm an engineer at heart. I've done a lot of the work. I had a team. We split it up, but I did a lot of the work myself too. And you know that the technical things are in place. It's like, I know I did this, it's fine. But sometimes you go back and you did some testing and you realize that, oh crap, I left this toggle off and I didn't turn it back on. And if we actually caught a couple of those ourselves, that the policy wasn't being applied to everyone it needed to. And if we would have got into our assessment and they saw that, then that would have been a not met control. So like I said, running back through everything, and you don't have to spend a ton of time. Just pop in there, take a screenshot of where it is. It just, that peace of mind helps out quite a bit. So
absolutely. Jacqueline, do you have anything else that you'd like to add to Jeff's answer there?
I mean, that was perfect. But I would just, the only thing really I'd just kind of emphasize is preparation's the key. Just make sure your team's ready for the assessment, not just your documentation's in place. Like Jeff said, everyone needs to know what their role is and be able to talk about what they do. So
physical security. So make sure that everyone knows that, hey, the assessor's coming in this day. Don't be lazy. Don't be leaving CUI sitting on the printer. Don't just, please, be on your best behavior sort of deal. Making sure doors are closed and locked if they need to be. Everyone, it's the human factor. Everyone has, lives, and people make mistakes and stuff like that. But making sure that everyone in the organization is aware of what's coming, and what you need to do is a big thing. One thing that I can comment on that we're dealing with right now is, once you get assessed, and what you get assessed on is what you're going to be using for the next 3 years. So if you have any plans on making any large changes, do it now before you get assessed, or you're going to be stuck in what you got. I wouldn't say stuck. You can make enhancements, but you can't make large changes. Otherwise, you'll have to go for reassessment. And that's kind of one of the things that we're looking at right now and trying to live within those bounds. So make sure that what you have, and you don't plan on changing anything later, because you won't be able to without getting reassessed. So.
Absolutely. I'm glad you threw that in there, because we hear it all the time. We passed. Now can we change our sim? And it's like, no, let's not do that right now. All right. Well, man, I think this has been awesome. All things considered, even with our team's difficulties, we've got a lot of great information for the listeners here. Jeff, want to say again, thank you so much for being on the Mad Security Town Hall today. We absolutely appreciate your time, your partnership. You've been great. You're very much appreciated. And listeners, to you that have joined us today, thank you so much for listening and engaging with us, engaging with the Q&A, for sticking with us through all these technical difficulties. Things happen and you understood. We appreciate you being here for sure. As a way to say thank you, the screen that I have up here for you now is going to be coming out in the email that's going to send the recording later. There are some amazing giveaways here, including the free pre-assessment that's going to be 31 questions of yes, no, not sure, to give you a good idea on if you're compliant ready or not. You're going to have the access to the whole CMMC master bundle, talking about things like CMMC prep and government contractors, talking about enclaves and several other things. Going to be some great information there for you. The CMMC assessment guide and/or free consultation. You can use my booking link or you can use my email. We'll set up some time to talk about what you're currently doing for CMMC and cybersecurity and to see if and how that MAD Security might be able to assist. If you do have additional questions, whether it be for myself or Jacqueline, you can reach us anytime. If you have additional questions for Jeff, send those to me. I'm sure I'll be happy to answer that for you. I can get the answer back over to you if we weren't able to get to you during the Q&A session today. Again, if you'd like to explore how MAD Security might be able to assist your organization, please put that time on my calendar or send me an email. I'll get you connected. And then if we don't hear from you before or see you before, we will see you on April 16th, which is the third Thursday in April, because every third Thursday of each month, we meet at 2 p.m. Central Time for 45 minutes to an hour during these town hall webinars. So until next time, stay compliant, stay safe, and have a great and blessed day. Thank you so much. We'll see you again.